Hello and welcome into the KE Report. Chad and Corey here, getting an update from Cosa Resources, traded on the TSX-V under the ticker COSA, and on the OTCQB under the ticker COSAF. And we're joined today with the president and CEO of Cosa Resources, Keith Bodnarchuk. And Keith, it's great to get you on the show, especially to highlight, I think, a very transformative transaction for the company. You put out some news on November 27th announcing the intention to form a JV with Denison Mines on three different uranium projects. Now, these projects are in the eastern Athabasca, kind of peppered around where some of your other projects are, but this gives you the potential to acquire up to 70% interest in these three projects. You've got Denison coming in as a key shareholder. I guess walk us through some of the nuts and bolts pieces of this transaction and kind of the thinking behind it.
Yeah, for sure. Great to be back, firstly, guys. And yeah, it is truly a transformational transaction for us. Like you mentioned, we will be forming a joint venture agreement with Denison Mines on three terrific projects in the eastern Athabasca Basin. We'll be acquiring 70% of those projects, and Denison will maintain 30% of those projects going forward. Importantly, Denison will become our largest and most strategic shareholder post closing of transaction, where they will own just under 20% of us. There are a few other components. Denison has gratefully put up their hand to participate a minimum of $1 million in our future equity financings for COSA. They will be appointing two members to our board. They'll also be appointing a technical advisor to our team. There will be some deferred share payments over the next 5 years from the COSA side, and we will be funding 100% of initial programs on two of those projects, Murphy Lake North and Darby. The projects themselves are absolutely fantastic. Murphy Lake North is the first one I'll talk about. It's within 4 kilometers of the Hurricane deposit, the world's highest grade indicated mineral resource for uranium, and importantly, the one that was found by our management team in 2018 during our time at IsoEnergy. So truly, a fantastic area to be in and one that we're extremely familiar with. The Darby Project. It's right next to Cameco Cigar Lake project, within 10 kilometers of the Cigar Lake uranium mine itself, which is the world's largest uranium mine, and then Packrat Project, which is just southwest of Cameco's Rabbit Lake Mill. So truly in tier one areas of the Athabasca Basin, really on the east side, and really areas that are hard to get into these days. And so for us, it's a fantastic win to not only get these great projects, but bring in a strategic shareholder in Denison Mines that's really going to be along for us, for this ride into the future.
So, Keith, what was Denison doing with these projects before you came in and entered into this JV earning?
Yeah, for sure. So they have done a lot of geophysics over the years to kind of upgrade them. They have done some drilling at the Packrat project over the years, but really their focus has been in and around their flagship Wheeler River project, where they have the Phoenix deposit and Griffin deposit. Obviously, Phoenix is the one that they're fast tracking to put into production here. And so they just haven't been able to get around to these projects. And it's important to note, too, that they've been expressing to the public that they aren't giving up on these projects, right? They're maintaining 30%. They view these projects as having great upside, but their focus is in and around that Phoenix deposit. And, over the next few years, they weren't going to be able to get to these projects. And what they're looking for was a group like us to come and be able to work and advance these projects. And, if we do have success, really provide a pipeline for them, right? If we do make a discovery, really opportunity for Denison to come in and help us advance that project.
Yeah, it's a really nice pairing too, just because I believe yourself and two other team members have worked on Denison's team before. So for them, you were known entities and you're familiar with even some of these projects having worked at Denison in the past. So let's dive into them a little bit further. At the Murphy Lake, as you mentioned, it's only 4 kilometers away from the Hurricane deposit at IsoEnergy. Your team is incredibly familiar with that area. Is it on the same mineralized trend? What kind of synergies are there? And then what will your approach be at Murphy Lake in the year to come?
Yeah, definitely. So the Murphy Lake North project, the northern part of it is a long trend of the Hurricane deposit itself. Importantly, there's a parallel trend to the south too that's over 7 kilometers in length. And it's really part of that larger Laroque Lake trend. And it's important to note that, the Hurricane deposit was not a one-hit wonder along that entire trend. There's historical intersections, say the Laroque Lake zone, where they hit just under 30% over 7 meters. Yekla Prospect, where they hit just under 10% over 3.3 meters. So this is, really one of the most juiced up areas in the entire Athabasca Basin, and really one of the most important areas over the past 10 years. And, basically you want to trip over yourselves to get access to a project like this in this area. And so the good news about all these projects that we acquired from Denison, we like to view them as being discovery ready. They have all the geophysics done. They have some drilling done, which really can paint a picture of what's happening underneath in the ground. But importantly, they haven't killed off the target areas. This drilling just really helps define where we should go from here. And so these are drill ready. Murphy Lake North will be a top priority for us in early 2025. We want to get drilling this one as fast as we can, and we intend to.
So you are on the hook for spending the first $1.5 million in exploration expenditures by the end of 2027. How quickly do you think you could get to that level? If you're going to be drilling it next year, this seems like an achievable target for the company.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important to note too that the target area, the target depths for Murphy Lake North are that 250 to 300 meters. So really shallow, even compared to some of the other projects we have. And so $1 million budget, you can get a lot done in that area. And so the $1.5 million spend, that won't be a problem over the next year or two. And that's our intention. And there's a lot of room there to really have some significant results. It's important to note that a lot of the main body of Hurricane deposit would be around 200 meters long, or even you go to Phoenix deposit, which I worked on during my time at Denison, which you guys touched on, that's about 250 meters long. So, we do have room in the northern part of the project, but also in the south, we do have that parallel trend, which has the same orientation, has had limited drilling, and we have over 7 kilometers of that. So that's why we're really excited to be in that area. And yeah, there'll be no problem to spend that initial $1.5 million.
Well, and Keith, let's also take a look at the Darby Project. This isn't a throwaway project either for either company. 10 kilometers away from Cameco Cigar Lake, 17 kilometers away from McArthur River, their mine. So what do you think the approach is here? And is the geology a little different, I'm assuming, in this area?
Yeah, so this is one that's been extremely interesting. I remember, it's one that Denison really wanted to get around to, but just couldn't. And I think you even talking to the geologists on the team at Denison, everybody that goes there and looks at the previous holes that were drilled, they all realize that the optimal target has not been hit anywhere on here, which tells you there's a lot of room here. There's a lot of meat left on the bone to go after. And what really happened was during the early, even to mid 2000s, what you do is you identify a conductor, and that's the graphitic structure or graphitic unit you want to hit. You go and drill a single hole. If you hit that, you assume that you'd proven your target, your geophysical target, you'd move on. So you just do these single hole fences. But what we've learned at our time, even at IsoEnergy with Hurricane, is that often there could be really broad packages here. Maybe the thing you want to go after is a parallel structure, a parallel graphitic conductor. And so there's a lot of opportunity here to really follow up on these previous drill holes that didn't prove the optimal target. And, it really is going to help guide us when we head in there to drill. Like you mentioned, it is butting right up against Cigar Lake Project of Cameco. It hasn't seen drilling really over the past 10, 15 years. And so it is an important project. And it's one I think you can actually build a company around. We're talking about being in one of the most prolific trends in the entire Athabasca Basin, and one that hasn't really been followed up. And so that's why we're extremely excited by it. And, Murphy Lake and Darby, they're really interchangeable from the prospectivity, and we're excited to get to both of them next year.
So there's a nuance to this Darby project as well. First and foremost, you need to fund the first $5 million in exploration expenditures to the middle of 2029, the end of June 2029, so about 4.5 years. But Denison can come back and reclaim up to 60% of this Darby project by paying you what looks like quite a bit of money. Take us through this nuance to this Darby project deal.
Yeah, so Darby was a difficult one to get. Denison knows the value of it. Like I said, you could in today's uranium market, you could build an entire company around this project. It's big in size. Like I said, it's right next to Cigar Lake. And so in order to get this one across the line, we came to an agreement that made sense for both parties, where Denison can buy down our ownership and retain 60%, where we'd go down to 40%. But in order for them to do that, they have to pay us the lesser of $50 million in value, or 450% times the expenditures of what we spent on the project. And so it's one of those ones where, we think we can have a tremendous amount of success here. If we do have it, Denison can come back in by giving us a significant amount of value. And really, they can lead us through the development stage of this project and into construction, which, Denison is currently working on that at Phoenix. So if we're looking to put our hand up and have a partner to help put this thing into production, if we do have that level of success, Denison is at the top of that list. So I view that as a win-win for both sides. And like I said, it is designed that if we do have success there, we will get a tremendous amount of value of it, and then we'll be along for the ride as it goes into the next phase.
Yeah, some nice optionality really for both companies. It's a true win-win, and the fact that they have a technical advisor on your team now and two board members offering some guidance. I think both companies keenly interested to see how things go at Darby. Let's also round it out with the Packrat project. This is 19 kilometers away from the Rabbit Lake Mill that Cameco has. It's also not too far away from some of the other projects that Cameco has. So maybe just walk us through the prospectivity at Packrat.
Yeah, so that one's interesting. It's one where there's this main Collins Bay trend, or Collins Bay thrust, or whatever you want to call it, where that hosts multiple deposits in the past. But a splay off that Collins Bay trend is where you have the Rabbit Lake, formerly mined, but currently the Rabbit Lake Mill. And so Packrat is really an analog to that. You have what we interpret as a splay coming off the Collins Bay trend, very similar to the Rabbit Lake scenario. And so that's why we liked it. I think, like we've said to you guys in the past, is that we go for these big, huge trends that exist in the Athabasca Basin, where you do have these analogs to those prolific McArthur River or Rabbit Lake or past success. And so that's why we identified Packrat as another project we wanted. And, like I said, it's very shallow, right? It's less than 100 meters sandstone cover in these areas. And so these are really, like I said, 3 projects we got that are discovery ready. They're mature. They're ready to go, in a sense that there's drill targets that exist. And, importantly, they're shallower targets. And so we're extremely excited to get to all 3 of these eventually. I think Darby and Murphy Lake North will be priority, with Murphy Lake North being that first one we really want to get to in early next year.
So, Keith, what about all the other projects that the company holds? You have a large portfolio of projects already in the Eastern Athabasca Basin. You've been working through a handful of them. Do these get put on the back burner now with these 3 new assets coming into the company?
Definitely not. This is a complementary acquisition. I think you look at any company in the Athabasca Basin, the Camecos, the Oranos, the NextGens, the Denisons, they all have a huge amount of projects. And it just goes to show you need that steady pipeline of exploration targets. Our goal has always been to continue to upgrade that pipeline. Anytime you get a chance to get a project that's right next to the Hurricane deposit and right next to Cigar Lake, you make it happen, and you trip over yourself to make it happen. And so, we still have a terrific portfolio of projects. I think some of them, like Ursa and Orion, even Aurora, will still remain a priority for us. We've had to really upgrade those projects, right? Where we've had to really do modern geophysics, really start to drill and identify, the picture that's happening below the ground. Whereas these projects we got from Denison already have that. And so, it's important for us to maintain that pipeline. Some of our other projects, they will get downgraded and we'll be willing to move off of them. But, having that, I'd even say 6 or 7 strong projects that are really elevated by the acquisition of these three projects puts us in good shape.
Well, Keith, just to that point, in our very last conversation, which was on Halloween, I think that we were noting that at the Ursa project, your 6th hole hit radioactivity and hit the signature you're looking for. So there's going to be some follow-up work there. And we've also talked about at Aurora and Orbit, to your point, you've done a lot of this early stage geophysics and some of the ground truthing. So with all that said, and with these other projects in the mix, what is the batting order when we look at next year's drilling between, I guess, Ursa, Aurora, and Orbit, but then also bringing in Murphy Lake and Darby? What is the, the prioritized drill plan for next year?
Yeah, definitely. So Murphy Lake North is the top one on the list right now. Like I said, it's right next to the Hurricane deposit. There's drill-ready targets, shallow drilling. And I mean, when you're drilling next to the highest grade resource in the Athabasca Basin, you go there and drill first. And so that's where we'll go. Darby will also be a priority next year. It might end up closer to the second half of 2025 exploring there. Ursa, we still have some assays and geochem results that we are waiting for. I think that'll help shape to where it's prioritized in 2025. And Orion and Aurora are other ones that will be important. I think, depending on the success we have at Murphy Lake North and Darby, maybe those are ones we get to drill in 2026. The important thing is that all of these projects, are in good standing. Ursa's in good standing for the next, 4 to 5 years before we'd have to go back and do some more work on it. So I think we've done a good job of maintaining our projects, ensuring that we have a long runway in case we go and have success at Murphy Lake North, right? We're going to want to stay in that area if we do have great success. Same thing with Darby. And so Murphy Lake North is number one priority right now, with Darby and Ursa being other ones that we want to get to.
So, Keith, I need to ask then, how much cash does the company have? How do you go about funding all this exploration that it sounds like you have ahead of you?
Yeah, so importantly, we finished last quarter of about 3.6 million Canadian. We'll carry the majority of that into our Q1 exploration season in 2025, where we'll focus on Murphy Lake North. It is very cost-effective exploration in that area. $1 million will go a long way when you're only testing 250 meters depth. And then I mentioned at the top of this conversation that Denison has put up their hand, to contribute a minimum of $1 million in our next financing. So I think that does give us a bit of freedom, bit of optionality as to when we need to tap the market. And so I think we can create as many catalysts as we can in between now and then. And so, you know what, we are in great shape, like I said, heading to that first half next year to do exploration, and that's our intention.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there for today, Keith. But yeah, a lot of catalysts coming in the drilling to come at multiple projects. So it's going to be fun following along with it. You got the money to get things kicked off. You've got a good strategic partner now. You've got a good synergy between the two teams as far as just sharing ideas, sharing technical insights. So it's going to be fun to watch the developments at Cosa Resources. And for those listening in, if you want to follow along with all the news, definitely click on the link below this interview. It takes you right over to the Cosa Resources website, straight to their news section, where you can sign up for updates or just follow along with the news as it hits the wires. Keith, keep us posted as more news breaks. We'll get you back on for an update, and looking forward to our next conversation.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.